Hello and welcome to your daily dose of complete health with your local chiropractor, Dr. Patrick Hogg. Please like and subscribe for more videos. Good morning, this is your daily dose of complete health with your local chiropractor, Patrick Hogg. And I just wanted to talk about something that I get asked all the time, which is, do I personally see a chiropractor myself? And why don't I just click and crack my joints? Or something a lot of clients will ask me is, why can't I just click and crack my joints myself? My joints really click or crack. So therefore, why can't I just click and crack my joints? Why is that not the same thing as having an adjustment done? Now, this is a really interesting question. I always like it when this conversation comes up, because clicking a joint and adjusting a joint are two very different things. Clicking a joint and adjusting a joint are two very different things. So a lot of people will know that people will click and pop their knuckles and gas will escape from the joint and it will make a loud pop or click. And this is true for pretty much every single joint in the body. Anything that has an articulation or synovial fluid that's in the joint will have nitrogen actually dissolved in the joint, and as a result, those joints theoretically, if pushed in the right direction or stretched in the right direction, will pop and click. And actually sometimes for clients this can be really helpful. The main example I can always think of is using something like the foam roller for the thoracic spine. I have recommended this to clients. I've recommended this to a lot of my CrossFitters and boxers who have really bad thoracic extension. They're doing overhead movement, or boxers that tuck under all the time. They don't have that thoracic extension. So rolling over the foam roller on the thoracic spine and taking it into extension will typically be accompanied by a lot of popping and clicking. However, it's still very different to having an adjustment done, because rolling over the foam roller will typically stretch the joint very, very slow, which is great for improving range of motion in the muscles and the ligaments and stuff around it, but it's not particularly good at retraining the brain. Now, this is a really interesting one. The biggest difference between clicking a joint and adjusting a joint is the speed and movement in which we move the joint. This is the coolest bit, because what we know is that the faster the joint is moved, and typically an adjustment needs to be delivered in less than half a second. The ideal is below 0.3 of a second, so it needs to be fast. The joint needs to be moved quickly. The brain responds completely differently. So what we've seen is when we put scanners on the brain, we can see the brain adapts best when the joint is moved quickly. Now, this is the biggest difference between clicking a joint and adjusting a joint, because when we adjust the joint, we make sure the joint is moved in less than 0.3 of a second, and as a result, that's when we'll start to see the brain change. Now, it's really interesting. If you were to stretch that joint and it pops, and you were to retest a muscle test, and you were to adjust that joint and it pops, and you were to redo a muscle test, you would see normally very different outcomes, completely. You will see that people's range of motion can start to change completely differently. You'll start to see that people's stability starts to change completely differently. People's pain levels can start to change completely differently. And this is the biggest difference. Why? Well, again, same thing is people will ask me, will I do my own adjustments or crack my back? No, not unless I'm doing the foam roller thing that I just spoke about. But no, I will never do my own adjustments. Why? Because I cannot assess my spine to see where the problems actually are. I cannot actually move the joints or put contacts or pressures onto the areas. Could I potentially crack certain joints in my spine? Absolutely, but do I do it? No. Why? Because it's not beneficial in the same way of getting someone else to actually check it through, have a look at it, and actually do the areas that need doing rather than the areas that I personally think that need doing. Because sometimes where the pain is or where the restriction isn't always necessarily where the problem is. And so it's actually having someone else. I'll go to see someone every week to every 2 weeks for a chiropractic adjustment. I go to someone every week to 2 weeks for a massage. And I'll also see homeopathy, see a homeopath as well, as obviously staying on top of loads of other things. But I just really want to share that experience, because I get it asked all the question all the time, because certain people pop and click. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing, unfortunately. I'd love to say it was the same thing, but unfortunately it's not the same thing. Patrick here from Complete Health. This is your daily dose. Enjoy this beautiful weather again. Let's just hope it's another beautiful day and that the weather is finally starting to settle in. Patrick here from Complete Health. We'll speak to you soon. Take care for now.